thank you everyone for being here. We're really excited to share with you our discussion, the future of AI and generative code. My name is Drew Blundell. I will be only providing light hosting duties, so don't get too used to me standing up here. But really happy to share with you today an amazing session and some really great, passionate leaders in our low code and AI space. So we'll spend a majority of our time on open Q&A, so you can get answers to some of your questions directly from our experts. Just a disclaimer that the session is hybrid, so all of your questions and the discussion captured will be is both being streamed and then also will be available generally after the session. So without further ado, I will go ahead and let our panel introduce themselves and share just a little bit about their expertise and their background, just to give you a little bit of an idea in terms of questions that you might be able to direct to certain panelists.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ted Wei. I'm a program manager lead on our AI team. So I support our product teams in building the AI models that go into the Copilot features.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wesener. I lead the Power Apps Studio team. So our group basically look after all the low-code authoring experiences and pro-dev authoring experiences for Power Apps and Dataverse. So the most recent sort of Copilot launches for building an app and working with Power Apps that have been announced this week.
Hi, everyone. My name is Koesmarno. I'm a product manager in the Dataverse team. Very excited to work with, my favorite colleagues here, delivering Copilot AI. Hopefully you get to try this out as well during build.
Hello, everyone. My name is Norah Liu. I am in the same team with Clay, and I'm a PM in Power Apps. And my main mission is to bring AI to every maker so it will be easy to make apps.
Awesome. Thanks again to our amazing panel for being here today and to provide a little bit of an overview of AI and some of the issues and topics that we've been talking about as a company and I think would be a helpful scene setter for you all. Ted will walk through some high-level concepts for you.
Thanks, Drew. So when it comes to OpenAI and large language models, there are three types of models, right? The first one from your GPT 3, 3.5, or 4, or Turbo ChatGPT models, this basically generates text. You give it a prompt, something like write a tagline for an ice cream shop, and you get text out of it as a response. That's the first horizontal. The second one is Codex, which is what GitHub Copilot is based on. So Codex was trained on open source software, all the different kinds of software that was trained on, and then you can give it an English prompt, and it could generate code for you. The third type is generating images, and this is the DALL-E 2 type models where you can give it a prompt and then it could generate an image. So whether it's going to be text, code, or images, these are the three types of models that we would use, that you can use too, to incorporate what we would build into the products. And then within the products themselves, I'm sure if you have any questions, things like AI Builder actions where you can actually program and add the prompts to those GPT models, you can do that too, where the GPT 3.5 type models are available for you to program. And I do also want to spend some time, and if you can help me go through some of the most common questions that we get when it comes to large language models is, does Microsoft collect our data? Is OpenAI using our data to train these models and make them smarter? And the answer is no, in the sense that we are not collecting your data to improve the model without any of your permission. So the way, from a machine learning perspective, it's a pure inference call. The way that these models are trained is they basically play a massive fill-in-the-blanks game with the internet, right? You think about taking a paragraph from Wikipedia, blank out some words, have it guess, have it update, and then if it gets it wrong, it gets updated, and then it does that again and again and again with every single piece of text on the internet. That's how this model is trained. When it's used, it's pure inference. All it's doing is figuring out what word will come after this string of words. And here's a string of words. What word comes next? What word comes next? Pure inference. So if you were to type in something like, here's my report for my strategy for next year, and you send it to ChatGPT or you send it through a Power Platform, and you get a summary of, hey, this is a summary of your strategy, your competitor is not going to be able to learn from that strategy because this model is pure inference only. And so I just wanted to make that very clear. And from an Azure perspective, the same security and privacy promises that you get from anything in Azure is the same thing that you would get with these OpenAI, Azure OpenAI models. So I just wanted to set the stage there. And also just a real quick glossary. Again, large language models, everything that Copilot is based on. These are deep learning algorithms that can recognize, summarize, translate, predict. The prompt is what you can instruct that large language model to do. Andrej Karpathy, I love his quote. He said, "The hottest new programming language today is English," right? Because anybody can write a prompt that can then program a model. Prompt engineering is a whole other issue now with using prompts to get the LLM to do what you want. So for example, different prompts will give you different results. And it's the same way with my daughter, right? If I go to my daughter and I say, "How's school today?" She'll say, "Fine." I'll say, "What did you do?" "Nothing," right? But if I say it's something like, "Hey, yesterday you told me you would have science lab in volcanoes. How was that? What happened?" Then she would say a lot more. Same with these prompts and LLMs. Tokens are pieces of words. And what matters is that different models have different sizes of inputs and outputs, meaning that a GPT-3 model with 4,000 tokens can take in less context than a GPT-4 model with 32,000 tokens. So you can't send the entire internet into these models. Hallucination is basically what happens when models may not be faithful to what you ask it to do. And people can hallucinate too, but models also do that. While temperature is how creative you want that model to be. So for something like code, you might want to set the temperature to be low. For something like create a marketing campaign, set the temperature high. So that was just a quick level set on kind of this generative AI landscape before we jump into our questions.
Great. And as the session is predominantly a Q&A, we'll go ahead and open both the virtual and in-person question and answer in the room. And I would ask for those attendees in the room, please raise your hands and our panelists will call on you in our best attempt to order them an answer. And also please ask them loudly, and then our panelists will repeat the questions from the room so that our folks joining online are able to hear the questions as well. And then we also have in-room moderators who will be answering and fielding questions for our panel. So I guess just to start a little bit of the conversation, considering that the majority of this panel focuses on low code and makers, I'm curious if each of you could share just a little bit about your perspective on what the future looks like for those audiences and in these products with the infusion and growing adoption of AI and Copilot tools.
I'll go first. So I think for me, we've learned a lot, particularly over the last 5 months, of how we can use AI, but also LLMs. If you go back, we've been using AI in low code for about 2+ years now. You've been able to generate a single line of a piece of code or an expression. We could create an app from an image which used object detection, but they were very, very specific cases and very, very targeted, sort of on the rails. Really what LLM has brought us in the last, in OpenAI in the last sort of 5 months is that ability to really open it up, make it more of a conversation and make it more natural. I think as we're thinking about the product as we look forward, there's probably, a few areas, particularly for low code developers, that we think it's most interesting. The first is where we've kind of focused in the March announcements, which has been really about getting started. So using a quick prompt that creates a data model for you, gets it up and running in the cloud and builds a responsive app over it, but then you're kind of on your own from there and you use the low code tools. The second is then the stuff we announced this week, which is really then about editing and sort of continuing to do tasks once you're building an app. I want to add a new screen. I want to add a button that sends an email, and us helping you with those individual tasks. I think the third bucket where then we'll sort of go to is, how do we then start helping and advising you in the best practices, making your code performant and sort of performing more advanced tasks. So we're sort of on a journey with it. The last 5 months have been really, really interesting and obviously very rapid for us. But, I think those sort of 3 areas are going to be how we're going to see the product evolve and where we're going to be leveraging AI a lot.
Okay, I'll add. So I come from the data world, and last year we had this conference called Power Platform Conference, and I think that was the first time, after pandemic, and we got to talk to a lot of customers then. I did a session, and then it turned out there was a resonating agreement that, hey, we have a lot of business data here that are stored in Excel. We want to make it easier for citizen makers or business users to be able to just bring that data easily into an environment where they can then further develop an app really easily in a low code or no code way. So from there, we got this idea of shipping this Excel to app actually. So with AI assistance, you can get this Excel file stored into a table in Dataverse and create an app really easily and beautifully. And so it's super helpful for folks to kick the tires, prototype, and just get started, and then customizing it further. So I think it's a game changer for people who want to try new things out, especially if they already have the data or some small business process in the background, right, in the systems, and how to bring it, making it more scalable, but in an easy and quickly way.
Yeah, thanks. I'll add too. So I'm primarily doing this intelligent authoring job in my career. So one of the interesting research number I find out is according to a Capgemini report, like more than 50% of the customers they interviewed are willing to embrace using AI for as part of their business solutions, and the number is keep growing in the past few years. So I believe people want to embrace the productivity, the efficiency brought in by all the goodness brought in by AI. And I want to treat AI, probably in the future, it could become, say, I'm in the maker world, and I want to treat AI as my maker buddy. Like I could work with a buddy to ramp up. I can ask it questions, and my app buddy could do heavy lifting for me, like doing repetitive actions and help me complete some sentences. And I can ask it to do some sanity check for my app, see if there's some issues, and I can go fix it. So I treat like this is more like AI will be my good buddy and assistant in the future, and we have to work hand in hand. Like I don't see any thing like human will be out of the picture thing. Just some of my thoughts.
Yeah, and for me, I really see the empowerment of people, that everybody can be a maker now, right? The ones who are closest to a problem, who may not have the technical skills to solve the problem, whether it's going to be creating an automated flow or an app or a web page or something like that, can now be empowered to do that with the power of natural language to imagine what they want and then have it actually built alongside with them.
Please. Yeah. So I think two parts. So the question, by the way, thank you. I just got 14 reminders to repeat the question. The question was, as we introduce copilots and AI-assisted development, ultimately, what do we see that doing in changing the role of the developer going forward? And so I think there's two parts. One, I'm not going to quote the exact statistic because I can't remember it, where it's from. But ultimately, there is an outpacing of app needs and ultimately the number of developers that exist. So the real focus for us is not really about dramatically changing the role, but how do we ultimately make a developer far more productive in what they're trying to do? And so if you look at things like, for example, the NL to app, we refer to it, but it's the ability to put a prompt, we create a table, set it up in a data model, and land you in an app. There's still plenty of development work to add real sophisticated logic to that application. What we've saved, though, is about 80 clicks in creating that table, setting data types, loading sample data into it so that you can actually get started. And that's where a lot of the tasks that we're focusing on are like, how do we make bulk actions, repetitive actions that are time consuming, but don't necessarily leverage the full talents of a developer. So I think for me, like, traditional pro dev low code developers who are active today, the goal is really how do we bring AI to make you far, far more productive? I think the other audience that will benefit are people trying to build an app for themselves or a small team that don't have development skills, and we can ultimately just really lower that threshold and barrier of knowledge.
This is definitely the question is what happens to all the intellectual property rights of all the things that are generated, right? So I think it's a real-time conversation that we all need to be in together as technologists, as regulators, as governments, right? Because it is a very interesting discussion in the sense that, okay, so these models are trained on open source, everything that's available, right? So it's not like they're trained on things that are the proprietary. So that's the first part. But then the second part is, okay, then when it generates something, what do you do with it, right? So if I were to walk to a museum and I were, me personally as a person, I look at some pictures and then I draw a picture that's kind of looking very similar, no one's going to come after me for any copyright infringements. But then an AI model might have different issues, right? So I think this is a little bit of a non-answer, I admit, but I think it is something that we are discussing in real time on figuring out from all the stakeholders to figure out like what is the way that we should move forward in this. But at the very least, what these models are trained on are things that are at least open source so that we don't get into those types of troubles.
I want to add to that, just so you know, we may have a few other Power Platform sessions later in the afternoon talking about copilots, and you may see there we have some image generation. We well know this IP issue for sure. We're not starting with image generation. We're starting with image searching. So those are all Microsoft stocked images. So just for your information. And when we're developing features, we're putting RAI principles, the responsible AI principles in mind as well. So we will be adding features like trying to bring awareness that this content is generated by AI. It may have mistake, but we just want to put it very clear for the transparency purpose that those are AI generated, so you will know.
Yeah, from our perspective, we're using, oh, sorry. The question is, based on all of the Copilot capabilities that Microsoft is building, are we using the standard OpenAI models or fine-tuned Microsoft models? And the answer is we're taking the OpenAI models and hosting them in Azure, and it's the original models that OpenAI developed. So basically, there are some fine-tuned models. So for example, for Power Automate, when we convert natural language to flow, we would fine-tune a version of the GitHub Copilot model and be able to run that for Power Automate. So there may be instances of those, but for the most part, they are the models. But we host them on Azure so that the same security and privacy guarantees that you get from Azure would still be there. And that's a very different paradigm in today's world compared to the past, right? So as an AI team, what we used to do is basically take in tens of thousands of training samples and create our own proprietary model. Now, we and the whole world have access to the same model. So now the question is, what do we add to our prompt to go into the model? And that's the big differentiator today.
Yeah, I would just say that I think the big thing that's helpful, because we all started playing with the public model as well, sort of at the beginning of the process. And I think that meta prompt that Ted mentioned there at the end is where a lot of the differences will come in the answer. Is we're providing additional context as part of the conversation and the interaction with the model of specifically how we need the response formatted, like what data types are supported in the table, and ultimately how we map that back into the type of app, automation, or website that you're building at the time. And that will make a difference in where you see potentially different responses from what you would get from the public model from in product, like within Copilot, is that context and meta prompt. Tasha.
Yeah, so the question is, how do we run these models on edge devices, right? Where the compute power, the memory, today, a model, if you take a GPT-4 model, takes a VM with 24 A100 80 gigabyte GPUs, and each one of those GPUs is like $15,000, right? And so massive GPU compute capacity required for these models. I think the traditional techniques of distillation, of teacher-student type techniques of distilling the models and getting the very similar outputs would still apply. So even with something like a ChatGPT, OpenAI came up with a ChatGPT Turbo, which was 10 times as performant, faster, and taking up a smaller memory footprint. So we're definitely on the trend to see how we can get these models smaller so that they can fit on types of edge devices and be able to run run there. So that's just basically the same traditional techniques that we would apply for deep neural networks that we've used in the past.
Ted, I would want to add to that because the Codex model you mentioned earlier for Power Automate and same for Power Apps and now to Power FX feature was kind of that result. We reduced the parameters significantly so it can run more fast and more efficiently. And it's not reducing its power to generate formulas, and it actually did a more focused job to generate, purely focusing on generating code.
Okay. So it's a really good, repeat the question. Thank you. The question was ultimately, as we see sort of low code, no code development, generative AI and supported development, how we see the pros and cons of both, and ultimately the two of them working together in the future. Is that a fair summary of your question? And so I think honestly that it's the latter part of that statement that how we see it evolving is ultimately these two working together. And it was very intentional. It's, you know, it's rare that I think we get a brand name that we all love so much, but like Copilot is really accurate in that as we look forward in the future designs and the work we've done already, it's very much about bringing it as part of the existing development experience, letting it help you get started and letting you support as you go throughout the development process. And already as we kind of look to our roadmap, we're looking at more inline experiences that kind of prompt with AI support as you're doing a particular task. And so I think back to the earlier question as well is it'll be really about how do we drive productivity and either providing support, reducing sort of time consuming tasks or difficult tasks. And I would see that low code, no code world really just be accelerated in using generative AI. So I don't necessarily see them as a pro and con. Our goal is really how we bring them together.
All right, so I'll add from the data perspective and from the customer's point of view, or from the developers from your perspective potentially right here, and I'll tie it up with a couple of questions that were raised earlier as well. So from your perspective or from the developer's perspective, right? I think the key here to think about is like, how do you make the most efficient or the better kind of user experience kind of apps for your end users? And when you think about it, the little things like I want to look up a library or PowerFX function, GitHub Copilot really does this really, really well, by the way, in terms of like, if you haven't coded in PowerShell for a while and you have to go back to it, right? It helps you a lot. And we want to be able to offer that kind of perspective, right? And the good news is data is everywhere. And the thing is, the form of data where it comes in is usually pretty different over time. So how do you keep up with this kind of different kinds of data that comes in so that you can build the best app experiences for your users and you don't have to worry as much about the drudgery, about the toil that you have to think about all these different variations? So we are here to help you to get there faster. So to me, personally and professionally, I think it does help a lot to kind of get you there.
I think we're over here now. Yeah, great shot. So the question was, you've seen lots of different copilots in lots of different spaces, and ultimately, when would you like look at using low code or Power Platform and how they connect? So to answer in two parts, I think from the Copilot perspective, there's already skills that we leverage between the Copilots. So as something that you can do in the Power Apps Copilot, you'll be able to do if you're an M365, you'll be able to do in Windows, as and when they make sense. So you'll see more and more of those skills start becoming more universal across the broader Copilot platform. So at least from if you're thinking about a plugin or something like that, it's less about an individual location and more about conversation or Copilot format for that skill. I think then for the second time of like type of tools, obviously, this is why our whole strategy is built on Azure, folks can still build apps consuming Azure services directly. You can work with AI. The advantage that we see, and really where we invest, is, not just citizen developers, but really acceleration of development. So if you're thinking about, well, I need to build an app, why would I build it on Dataverse? There is hopefully it gets cooler if they turn the lights off. Why would you build on Power Platform? Ultimately, you're jumping onto a platform where your authentication is already taken care of, your backup is already taken care of, there's compliance in place, you know what I mean? You've got a database deployed. There's a bunch of work that you would have to set up manually that is ultimately accelerated, as well as that's not even to mention sort of governance tools on top of it. So two-part answer, but I think, from the Copilot perspective, we'll be driving for as much reuse and commonality across the tools. For low code, we really see it about the acceleration of development, and ultimately, whether you're using AI or not, how we make that process easier, faster, more secure. Thanks.
I think just real fast, what I also wanted to add in this whole concept of plugins and skills, right? You can think of a ChatGPT or an LLM as almost like an iOS or an Android, and then a plugin or skill is your app, right? So the idea is a ChatGPT, you would be able to ask it something like, what's my best itinerary for coming to Seattle? And it would need to know something like, oh, I need to go ask my plugin or app or skill of what's the list of all hotels available, or what's the list of all restaurants and all the reviews and stuff like that, and then be able to bring that information back, right? So these skills, these plugins, these apps, these can be used by these LLMs, and then in some similar to an app store, a skill store, plugin store type, these are the things that can be developed that can augment the capabilities of these large language models. Yeah, so the question is, if you were to use something like a GitHub Copilot, right, will your organization's lawyer be happy that the code that it generates is something that you can incorporate into your product and that you could actually use, right? And I'll say I'm not on the GitHub Copilot team, so I won't be able to speak authoritatively to this answer, but I'm assuming yes, because it's there and people are using it. This code is being integrated. But some of the other things that we are doing would be things like, from a responsible AI perspective that Norah mentioned, would be things like provenance checks, right? So if a Copilot gives you an answer, there would be a provenance of, okay, where did this source of information come from? One, so you can verify and check it yourself, and two, just have a confirmation of that information, that whether it is something that you could use. But I think the short answer would be yes, in that it's a product that's already available that you are able to use.
So the question was, you're not in the previews yet. When do you get access? The unfortunate but blunt answer is the different copilots have different timelines. So for Power Automate and Power Apps, they are already in public preview for North America environments. So if you create an environment in North America, you will get access to Copilot by default. The new actions that were announced this week are going to be rolling out over the next month and a half out to those environments as well. For the other products, I can't speak to exact timelines, but in general, what the products have been doing is going through a short gated preview first for validation and feedback, and then opening up more broadly. If specifically Power BI you're interested, feel free to connect me afterwards. We can point you to the right folks. But I would say for products that are waitlisted, they are clearing and numbers are growing there. For some of the Power Platform, we've already completely ungated it. And that's really our push right now. We've gotten a lot of this technology moved in the last couple of months. We've got it out to the world. Our goal now is really get it out to everyone and really start driving and enabling usage.
So the question is, how are we measuring the feedback for the AI quality? Is that the right summary? So I can only comment about the Power Platform, like Copilot features, because when you use that, you will see almost every response card will have a thumbs up and thumbs down button for you to rate it. So if you're not happy with the result, definitely rate it like thumbs down and leave us some feedback telling us why you think it's not good. Either it's not relevant or you think it's producing something inappropriate. So we will know that and we'll review that answer and see how we can tune this this model to better to fit it better. And others will be just about usage. We'll monitor how users are adopting it. We won't be able to collect your user prompts, right? We don't know what you typed in, but we'll be monitoring, hey, like only 10% of users are using this, meaning something might be wrong. It's not helpful, or we will follow up with user researchers, user studies to figure out what's the kind of exact reason for people not liking it.
Yeah, and so in terms of measuring quality and user satisfaction, some of the things that GitHub Copilot does is first is acceptance rate. So if you type something and you get a chunk of code, do you actually accept it? And then second one is retention, in the sense of after 5 minutes, how much of that code is you still have there, right? And so something similar in, say, Dynamics 365 marketing, if you want to ask Copilot to help you generate an email campaign, marketing campaign, one of the things we can do is measure, okay, here's some text and some verbiage that is used for your email campaign, and then how much of it do you actually include in your email, for example. So these are ways of measuring how much is retained and actually used.
I was just going to add one quick there. We also sort of continually look at MPS, which is our satisfaction score. It's when you get that little prompt saying how likely are you to recommend to a friend. And we do specifically then look at the cohort that are using Copilot and AI generative features to understand their satisfaction as well, and how that's trending based on the features that they're using. So in terms of both looking at success and direct feedback, we do also just monitor the overall satisfaction of the population using it. Cool. Tasha. The question was, Copilot in Power Platform, is it a new service or a new product? Was that the question? An additional service or new feature. So I would say we very much treat it as a feature. It is not a product in itself. It is a feature that exists similar to other AI capabilities that we have launched that exist across the entire platform. So it's not something you don't like go and go, I'll have one Copilot. It is something that you are going to see across the broader Power Platform, across the broader Microsoft space, that'll ultimately help you build apps, help you work with data within apps as well. Go over there. Gentleman with white shirt. I'll say something really quickly, and then this sounds like a TED question. Repeat the question. Do we see LLMs not just being used to assist developers, but other roles within the organization, generative images for data scientists and other roles? So I would say already, and I think we announced it today, or maybe we're announcing it later today, but we've started to introduce things like app descriptions that now can be automatically generated, solution descriptions for the admin sort of role within organizations. And so already, if you kind of look at how we're using Copilot in the broader sense in Microsoft, it's already helping individual users. You can add it to apps. You can use it for automation. You can use it to help build apps. But now we're starting to stretch it into help people govern apps and build deployment pipelines and ensure sort of quality and review. So I would absolutely think we'll continue to expand in the types of roles that we support and ultimately what we do with it. Developer was very much where we started, just given the nature of our product, but we're already seeing it start to expand to support other roles.
Yeah, and absolutely from a how does it help data science perspective, we are using large language models to generate training data. So for example, if we wanted to generate additional training data that might improve other types of models, whether it's going to be images or whether it's going to be text, we're already using that today to generate the models, to generate the data, and also just to evaluate the data, to label the data. So you think about the challenges of gathering a good set of training data. LLMs can generate them, they can label them, and then that can augment the existing data set for training these models for data scientists.
I'll actually just add a little bit as well here. The feature that we just recently released, the Excel to table, in fact, that is generating or suggesting the table name, table description, column names, column data types. Well, it's not quite data scientists, very hardcore data scientists, but it does help people to kind of just get there really, faster than before.
The next question comes from brave developers who are not afraid of Copilot.
Fantastic.
How can
Is that their username?
How can I leverage Copilot with my team? How do we create a framework of incorporating Copilot and AI in our dev environment? What practices can we put so our team can develop for the team who develops in agile environment? Repeat.
Got 2 mics being handed to me. So the question was, ultimately, how can you leverage Copilot while you're working in a team? So a team of different developers, ultimately, sorry, what was the extra part? Oh, and how to start using it. Yeah. So I would say one thing. I think in the how to start part, I will answer first and more how I started using it. I think understanding an example or something you do today and seeing how LLMs and Copilot can assist you is honestly one of the most powerful realizations. I still remember in January where I saw it create a table based on a simple description and build an app from it. It was kind of like, I was like, oh, okay, I get this now, why there's so much noise. I get that potential. So as Copilots become available across the Microsoft surfaces, I would say use it, even if it's not in development, even if it's not in GitHub, even if it's not in Power Platform, use it in a product that you're familiar with and you're working in day to day, and get a feel for ultimately how the model can make you be more productive. It's a good way of just kind of understanding its value before you go and apply it to potentially a new scenario. The other bit I would say about kind of a team working together, we've kind of already been starting our thinking about how does Copilot sort of become a member of a broader development and fusion team. And so not just one developer one-on-one working with Copilot or 5 developers all working one-on-one with Copilot, but ultimately how does it become part of that broader conversation and another teammate you can kind of assign tasks to and get to do work. That's not something we have in product at the moment, but there's definitely a strong connection for us of Copilot supporting an individual and Copilot supporting a broader dev team as well that we'd get into in the future.
Oh, go ahead. Okay, I'll go. So just a couple of things, and I'm sharing some of the learnings that we have internally so that maybe you can also take it at home and try it out, right? So one thing that we notice is that just because you are actually, say, for example, leveraging LLM, the whole sort of like software development lifecycle, it doesn't just disappear. In fact, it is really needed for you to be able to scale. You'll need to know, like, you need to be able to set up benchmark testing as an example. Oh, I've used this prompt, and does it actually really does it actually work or not? Oh, I've changed this prompt. Is it better? So you do this a bit of a A/B testing as well. And CI/CD, it's still there. You're probably likely going to need it just because it helps you manage your code, manage potentially some of the prompts or even maybe models that you're using. So the fundamental things that you've heard or learned in software development lifecycle actually does apply when you embark on incorporating some of this LLM in your own development environment.
Only one thing to add, do review the results generated by Copilot. Treat it as your dev peers, like you do code reviews for your peers. Do review the results generated by Copilot and make sure it's correct before apply.
We have one more question. Gentleman in the back, you've had your hand up since the start. I'll answer a really high-level aspect, and then someone else can jump in. I would say, first of all, repeat the question. Thank you. I thought you were saying wrap it up. The question was ultimately, as like new technologies are deployed and sort of packages are available, ultimately, how does the model sort of progress and learn? I would say one thing, this is an important aspect of as we think about, how we tune like our prompt engineering and the Metaprompt that we work as well. It allows us to sort of do that immediate control of how we're consuming what is coming back from the model and ultimately integrating it into the product. And so there are some things that we kind of resolve and deal with as part of that process. For the broader model, that is a great
Yeah, so it's definitely an LLM took a snapshot of the internet maybe 1 or 2 years ago, right? So it doesn't know the latest and greatest of everything. And so really what we want to treat these LLMs are as essentially orchestrators. So when you give it something and you say, hey, I want you to write a function that does X, Y, Z, it knows it needs to do X and then Y and then Z. So, but instead of pulling from its own repository of knowledge, it should know I should go into this latest set of libraries to get X. And so this kind of goes back into that plugin model where Copilot would know, go to this repository, pull up the latest library version, and then send that back to you. Just kind of like the which restaurant should I go in Seattle? It doesn't know the latest restaurants, right? It needs to know to go to that repository, grab the latest thing, and then give it to you. So the whole point of this whole retrieval augmented generation RAG and the ability to be able to find the right examples and serve it back to you, that would be the solution to do that.
Excellent. Well, please join me in thanking our panelists for their time today. In the chat, if you want to drop some hearts and clapping emojis, that'd be great. And also thank you to our moderators for helping us manage the virtual chat. And so, again, as we leave you, I know there's a lot of Copilot and LLM and AI going on throughout Build. So, please join us this afternoon or evening at 4 p.m. There's also a session covering the latest AI innovations in Power Platform. That's up in Ballroom 2. And if you have more questions that we weren't able to handle in this session, the low-code Ask the Experts room is just around the corner in room 438. So again, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your build.